Good morning.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's NBAR meeting. Right now, we'll go into public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to a subject that is not on today's agenda?
Good morning, Chair. We do not have any public comment.
Thank you. So has anyone talked to anyone, applicants, staff, planning staff, supervisors, as far as for the item that is on today's agenda?
Nope. No.
Okay. Can I get agenda status report?
We have no changes to the agenda.
Thank you. You guys were emailed the January 31st meeting minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. So in your packets, you received the meeting minutes for January 31. I'm assuming you've had time to review those. Is there anyone that would like to make a addition, a revision, or add a comment to those meeting minutes?
I have no comments. No comments.
Okay.
I was absent.
All right. With that said, I'll ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes for January 31st. I'll second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Abstain.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, moving now on to the NBAR members informational briefing. I got nothing. All right,
I have nothing.
okay. We'll move on to staff update.
Hi there, this is Shannon Reese. I do have sort of an update for you guys. I know we've had a canceled meeting and some smaller agendas. So what I did was I just looked at as a, representation, what we'd had come in since January 1st up north to kind of see what our forecast looked like. And we will have some larger projects coming. In particular, we'll have the design guidelines and some discretionary projects related to the Solomon Hills development application, which is a 4,000 unit new town kind of thing. So we will have that, but it may be a while before we actually have all the materials that we need you to look at. So that's coming and will be a large meeting. Part of it is just that we haven't had too much come in this year. I only looked at like a sample being in the Orchid area, but we do have a lot of application submittals that are in progress, and we may have like a sign coming to you soon. We've only gotten one single family dwelling application in so far in the 3 months. So part of it is just that there hasn't been too much coming in. We do have a building on a commercial DVP that will probably come your way pretty soon, but I wanted to give you guys an update since I figured you might have some questions or thoughts about the recent agendas. So
Shannon,
hopefully
what's
that's
the status
helpful.
of Key Site 3 and 1?
Key Site 3 is submitting it's approved as of 2022 or 2021, I can't remember, approved discretionary entitlements, and then they're in the process of submitting for their map clearance application to be able to record the final map. Key Site 1 had a complete project, had started the EIR review process, but then they wanted to make changes to their project after that, and ownership has changed. So they did a pre-application recently with what they envision putting on the property. And as you may know, a portion of that site was rezoned to MRO during the housing element update process. So they have recently submitted for the first time for the new project. They're missing some entitlements still. There's some things that need to be resolved. but it qualifies as a housing development. So it would be exempt from design review and would just have to comply with objective standards as
Is the
currently
commercial gone
proposed.
away?
There's still commercial on it, but it's 2/3 residential.
We won't do the commercial.
So it, under our ordinance, because it's a housing development by definition, it wouldn't be subject to design review. It would just be subject to the objective standards. They may come, you know, on a conceptual basis voluntarily for the commercial structures, but that's not a change that only applies to North County. That's the entirety of the county, but that's the multiple unit and mixed use unit, like development standards that went into effect about 2 years ago. It was different, like on the Constellation project, if you remember, that had 2 separate development plans and didn't have enough square footage to be considered a housing development for the whole project. That's why you guys saw the hotel for that one.
But Shannon, how's that different than some time back we looked at the clubhouse development there? I think it's Rice Ranch.
The clubhouse for Rice Ranch.
That's a housing development as well.
Yeah, yep. Before the state HUD became an enforcement agency. Yes,
That we wouldn't have even seen that today then.
you wouldn't, no.
Okay.
And neither would any other BAR.
One last question about Solomon Hills.
Sure.
Prior to them coming, can we do a field trip out there? Cause
Yes.
it's so big.
They even offered, so I think once we know when they're gonna be scheduled, we'll know a month or 2 in advance. I think we can help arrange that. It just would be that, you know, either, well, I think the best way to approach it probably is to do less than, you know, less than 3 members on any trip. There isn't a good way to really, I don't think it could be agendized as a site visit. There's not really a good way to transport the public on that property. So I think it would need to be like the members would go and we just schedule it such that we don't have any Brown Act violations. Because you need a 4-wheel drive vehicle and it's like a guided, I mean, it's just not a site that anyone can just visit and be able to see, you know, the components of the site. Hopefully that makes sense. I mean, is the board open to doing site visits in advance like that? I'm sorry, if you guys are speaking, I can't hear anyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Shannon, for your time.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
We'll move on to the standard agenda. Item number 1, BAR number 24. 00053, the Verizon cell site at 2775 Clark Avenue. If the applicant is available, go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and begin your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Armando Montes with Sequoia Deployment Services, presenting our project at 2775 East Clark Avenue. Believe this is the 3rd time we've presented this project. We received preliminary approval back in August of last year, and we are presenting again for final approval. Just to summarize, we are proposing a 100-foot tall monopole tower at the back end of the property here. with a equipment lease area of roughly 900 square feet. All the equipment will be hidden behind the 8-foot tall chain link fence. The monopole will be finished in a low polish galvanized finish, just to kind of easily blend with the skyline and not cause too much attention to itself. I think we went back and forth previously about maybe painting the pole, but I think this is the finish we decided on. And yeah, that's pretty much my very brief presentation. Open to any questions you guys may have.
What is different from these plans from what we saw previously? Anything?
No, nothing has changed. Since the last time we've spoken about the project, everything has pretty much been the same. We're currently going through the building permit process, I believe, to get the rest of our entitlements. But in terms of design from the last time we've seen it, no, nothing has changed.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody else have any questions on this one?
No, I do.
Okay. Okay, before we open it up to a vote, I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this item.
We do not have any public comment.
Okay, with that said, I'll ask for a motion to grant final approval on BAR number 24-00053, the Verizon cell site at 2775 Clark Avenue.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Okay, with that being the only item on today's agenda, I'll ask for a motion to close this meeting.
Point of order. Point of order. I don't know how to even approach this. We've had this discussion before. I don't know if you want to be on the record. If we can have a meeting afterwards, but I think we have something. I said I'm happy to be on record with comments I have to make, but I think we need to have a continuation of a discussion we started about 6 or 8 months ago. We can do it after the meeting, however you want to do it. But I'd like to have an open discussion with my fellow board members.
Let's do that now.
We can do that on record?
Yep.
Okay. I think what I'm concerned about, and it started back a number of months ago when I felt like we were being asked to groom our replacements, when planning asked us to be involved in putting together what the requirements were that they would use to be able to handle things across the desk. And this has gotten to the point where all we're doing is approving cell towers. I think whatever relevance this group has had or any of the bars have had has come into question, at least in my mind. I'm wondering what we're doing here. I have approached directly our supervisor. Our supervisor's chief of staff on numerous occasions have been told that at some point that Supervisor Nelson was willing to have a meeting with us to discuss the fact that we do not have parity with the other bars or the circumstances of the bars, specifically ours. What is the future looking like for us? Because if all we're going to be doing is things that have absolutely no design relevance or make any impact in the community at large, that do not protect the small communities, unincorporated communities that have absolutely no oversight whatsoever right now. And as you mentioned the property, another 69 units going into Los Alamos, 59 that just happened. That's more development that's gone on in any of these other areas with no oversight whatsoever. There's a lot of talent in this group. There's a lot of care in this group. There's a lot of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge that is going unused. And just at some level, I feel it's being disrespected because I feel like we're being tolerated. We're not being accepted or used to advantage. I mean, everybody comes here every month willing to sit here and spend whatever time we need to spend to help enhance and improve the quality of architecture and our communities. And it's like, you know, a meeting, 15-minute long meeting. I'd like to know what other people think. And my concern is that if we do not address this as a body and reach out to the supervisor and ask for some official communication about this, I don't know where we go. I mean, it's very, very frustrating. So that's what I have to say on the subject. And I welcome anybody else's comments because I know we all feel somewhat the same way. At least that's what I've gotten from everybody.
I just add just for clarity real quick, so I think I mentioned there's only been one single family home that's come in. It's not in design control. It's not Hillside Ridgeline. It doesn't have map conditions. It would not go in any other BAR either. I think that's the only project of the selection that I looked at that would be relevant to that particular item of discussion. But is the group okay with agendizing this so that we can have it on the agenda so the public knows that it's going to be discussed, and then we can have it take minutes on what's discussed?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And
I would think so too.
maybe at the same time, is it possible that we could invite Supervisor Nelson or maybe some of the other seated supervisors or something like that, so that we could have a more, not just located to our North County BAR, but to the,
I'm sorry, I can turn on. But to all the BARs in general, I mean, I think this is, in many cases, it's not what the planners want to do. I think it's the state preempting a lot of this stuff. Back to my same question, whether we would be reviewing the community center down there at Rice Ranch. You mentioned that at that time we did, but the state's now changed the laws. So we wouldn't review that today, which seems unfortunate. So I think that, agendized discussion would be absolutely paramount.
I mean, I get notifications from the other bars, particularly C-Bar. And I see they have a list of sometimes 8 and 10 items that they're reviewing. They're still seeing things.
Yeah, that's in part because they have more design control overlay in their areas with purview.
And we have none.
Well, you have some, but it's, I mean, they have a scenic highway that has a large swath of design control overlay. So that's in part why they see more items. So I think when we discussed it previously, I talked about some of the reasons, like the other BAR see more and what it would take to, increase the jurisdiction on design review in some of the community plans and areas that are in the North County. I mean, we talked about community specific objective design standards, expanded design control overlays. Those are the types of things that would help. But again, like even if there were objective standards that were community specific, they wouldn't come to the BAR on housing projects, anything that qualifies as a housing development. So I'm happy to, and Teresa's happy to put this on the agenda. and we'll defer to you as to who you'd like to be at the meeting so that we can invite them.
There's a term in legal parlance, it's called favored nations. Most favored nations, it means that everybody has the same benefit, the same liability. And I think that's one of the things that is a must going forward with this group, that we need to be in parity with the other bars. That we need to have the same advantages, the same bite to what comes out of this committee, this board. It makes no sense to me that we keep being told that it goes back many, many years when a former supervisor didn't want his turf bothered by oversight. And that's been a long time ago, and this is a different world. And I think what we're fighting for is our turf here, because we're being sidestepped as much of the rest of the area is being sidestepped. I'm not saying planning doesn't do a good job, but planning can't do everything. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here at all.
Well, our role is to help planning.
Right.
I mean, at least that's how I see it, our role anyway. But I think what's troubling to me is, and there's no cure for this part, but how the state has preempted so much of this out of the hands of local planning and local
Right.
jurisdiction with their misguided ideas that somehow this is going to foster more development.
And the thing with that is, if we are being preempted in that fashion, somehow we have to fight back to regain a little bit of our turf. I mean, we're being stepped on. They've taken away a lot of choice from us. We, as a board, cannot fight that fight. That has to come from supervisors. Supervisors have some impact with the rest of the state. We don't. And I mean,
Well, Shannon, maybe you can address, isn't the state mandated numerous housing numbers for various areas of the county, in fact, of the whole state?
Well, the RENA numbers, yes, but this is more related to the Housing Accountability Act, which says that for anything that qualifies as a housing development, so 2 units or more, and a certain percentage of residential, if there are commercial components, are only subject to objective standards. Things that can be uniformly applied, don't require the application of any like subjective judgment, which what the BARs do is, I think you'll agree, like subjective judgment. So it's difficult to reconcile the requirement that housing developments only be subject to objective standards with a board that's purpose is to assess a project from a subjective point of view. And I mean, I don't mean to discredit what you do at all, because I think you add value to the review process, but it's just, those are 2 incompatible notions.
Objective would be like, the ordinance says the building has to be red, and if it's red, then it's fine.
Yep, the setback has to be this, the height can't exceed this. They have to have, if they have a roof line that extends more than 50 feet, then they have to have 1 change in the roof line. I mean, things like that. So.
Yeah, I understand.
I understand too, and I also would caution that this looks very much like something that could end up in the hands of a computer, and everything would be done by AI. That any sort of judgment would be rendered useless and ineffective when you can just shove a plan in a machine and it'll say yes and no. You know, we're talking about building projects that will probably be around for 100 years. They have impact that will far exceed our time here. And that for this to be okay is looking at it, I think, in a very limited fashion. There needs to be a little bit more or a lot more emphasis placed on how our communities, how the state, this beautiful state, is going to look going forward. There's a lot of stuff going on that nobody seems to have any control anymore, except the most subjective of judgment. It's like,
Has any other communities or agencies figured out a way around this?
I mean, a lot of communities have written objective standards that apply, kind of to only certain regions in their community. So like one thing right now, we only have objective standards that apply across the whole county, objective design standards. I think the easiest way to still comply with the law, but have more localized control, is to make specific design guidelines, that would apply to certain downtowns or downtown areas, or, certain regions of the county. That's probably the most straightforward way to increase local control while still complying with the law, in my opinion.
What would that process look like to make those kind of changes?
Probably community plan amendments,
Which go through the
ordinance
board?
amendments.
Or
It
do
has to go through the board, and be prepared by long-range planning typically. So they have a work program that's usually 3 years out, where the board approves the work program and sets the priorities for the division.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, can we schedule that meeting with both the supervisors and the planning commissioners for our area?
It might be a lot to try and do that by April, depending on people's availability, but I think maybe if you're open to this, it could make sense to invite long-range planning and perhaps I don't know if more than 2 of those body members can be. We'd have to look at the Brown Act implications and just make sure we don't invite people that can't be in the. It is a public meeting. I think we need to review this internally with hearing support to see who could be invited and how it needs to be agendized.
Well, it
A
doesn't
start-
have to be a regularly scheduled BAR meeting. Michael can ask for a special meeting at any time.
Sure.
And then we can get all of our appointing supervisors here.
Which would be only 2, right?
2 planning commissioners and 2 supervisors.
Yeah.
Is there any District 3 land that's still under MBAR jurisdiction?
no,
I don't think there is. There might be a small, like kind of rural area potentially, but I think it aligns now with the district.
Okay. Yeah, well, work on getting long range and supervisors available for that.
It doesn't.
A
yeah, it doesn't have
meeting?
to be April. I mean, it could be.
Yeah, it just needs to be a meeting. Schedule it when everybody's available for it, rather than have these discussions internally that get nowhere.
Sure. So you'd like long-range planning and district supervisors, potentially plural, depending on the Brown Act requirements to attend, but not the other BARs, or, I mean, does it make sense to have an initial meeting first and then?
Yes, I think that makes sense.
they could all come if they want.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't exclude them specifically, but I think more importantly, we want to have at least a localized discussion.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Michael brought up a good point when he talked about the former supervisor. I can't remember who it was that had that language that
Right.
unburdened.
who that was.
Joe Centeno.
Okay, yeah. So it is pretty much specific to NBAR, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then, and one of the other things I wanted to ask was that project that we looked at in Vandenberg Village that as a courtesy was brought to us, the one at, gosh darn it, was that 5-story or 4?
The hotel?
No, it wasn't a hotel. It was the
Oh, it was a,
housing project next to.
Oh, Breathe Encina.
Yeah, so that was brought to us as a courtesy. That didn't have the design control overlay or. Actually, I was gonna ask, was the Housing Accountability Act used for that one?
That project was processed pursuant to AB 2162. They did come voluntarily. The one thing that we've been struggling with is that we can also only subject projects to up to 5 hearings. And BAR review counts as a hearing, even if it's conceptual and voluntary. So, and we have to reserve hearings for appeals and such. So, you know, there are some constraints, even if a project does want to come voluntarily. But that's, yeah, that project was a housing development under the Housing Accountability Act, and it was processed with a ministerial review path under Assembly Bill 2162.
Thank you.
so I guess just let us know. Right?
Yes, I will talk to our deputy director on Tuesday about this, and Teresa and I will both loop in David and we'll start to coordinate.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything
All
else?
right.
Got to get a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So we're.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. You can stay if you want.
You can stay.
I'll even turn on your mic for you.
Oh, right.